Welcome to Jurassic World.
Good morning, guests. Welcome to the Jurassic World Minute. We'll be visiting Jurassic World 1 minute at a time. VIP control room tours can be booked from the Innovation Centre lobby daily. I'm Brad.
I'm Dave.
And today we're here to discuss on this episode we're here to discuss minute 12 of Jurassic World. Before we get to that, David, there's been a big elephant in the room, and we're going to head over to Jurassic-Pedia.com and talk about these maps.
Mm-hmm.
We get to see the new Isla Nublar map here in the control room in this minute. We're going to see more of what's on it, but the fact here we can clearly see a different shape than the Isla Nublar we know from Jurassic Park itself, the maintenance, or the control room, the brochure maps. Here we have another installment of let's have a new map.
Yes. In the novel, it's kind of always left up to the imagination what the actual image of Isla Nublar looks like. In Jurassic Park, we kind of get a couple different maps. We get one that's a brochure map that we see kind of cartoonish shape of the island that is plastered on the brochure, on the island signs, kind of plastered here and there across the island. And it's always kind of been assumed that that's meant to be more of a cartoonish map in the vein of, like, say, a stylized Disneyland map that you'd get in the brochure of, you'd get when you walk into Disneyland.
Well, we had that with.
What's that?
We had that with the brochure map in Jurassic Park too, more of a cartoon version of Nublar.
Well, that's what I'm referencing. That one. We also get one in the Jurassic World viral site that's exactly like that. It's also cartoonish. Everything's enlarged. It's meant to look kind of funny. It's meant to look. It's easy to read, basically. It's not the satellite map that we have that we get in the computers in the control room in the first movie, which is this kind of roundish teardrop shape with two main rivers that cut through the island, one in the northeast corner, and then one on the kind of the east side of the main part of the paddocks, where presumably the original river tour would have taken place in. It's kind of interesting because, and we'll talk about it when we get to Fallen Kingdom as well, but that river, when we got Fallen Kingdom, it's meant the lagoon that the Jurassic World Main Street is parked on the side of, that Mosasaur Lagoon with the beaches and the Mosasaur pen and all that. It's inadvertently moved to the side of the island where we get basically it connects directly into the ocean. Trevorrow said that was erroneous and a mistake by the visualization department, and that what it's intended is that it's now the lagoon doesn't go directly out into the ocean, but instead connects to a series of rivers that itself leads out in the ocean. And if you actually look at the satellite map from the first movie, you can see that main river on the east side of the island cuts all the way into the center of the island, where the actual island, or where the actual lagoon would have been in the first Jurassic World movie that we're discussing now.
Mm.
But that's not the problem. The problem is in Jurassic World, the island itself is a completely different shape than what it was on the satellite maps in the first movie. And this is going off the control room map, which presumably is satellite feed, and the ACU map that we see Owen going off of later in the movie. And that map itself is extremely strange because it both enlarges and shrinks the island itself. We get these massive looking islands that we see on the island. Massive looking mountains that we see on the island. But on the southern end, it looks to be covered entirely by beachfront, which is weird because that beach would have to be a couple miles inland, and that's not how beaches work. Other places, you see the mountains, the actual mountain range just stops. It doesn't. It's not that the islands get smaller. It's like the mountain itself just gets cut in half and stops. And it's just a terrible, terrible map. And I want to strangle whoever did it just for the idiocy of the geology here.
Yeah. It doesn't help, like, as you were saying before about Colin talking about the lagoon. We got photos and screen caps here over at Jurassic-Pedia.com in this article. It's in the Isla Nublar article that we're looking at once again. We're going to be referencing this a fair bit during our discussion of the next two movies. But the fact that when Jurassic World come out and fans noticed, or when Fallen Kingdom come out and noticed the difference in the lagoon, and him saying that it's connected by the canals and that, but then when Fallen Kingdom come out and it's next to the beach, it said, well, this is how it was supposed to be. As you said before, someone put the wrong maps up, but all the maps are the same. Like, they've gone through the entire film and had the wrong maps there in Jurassic World, instead of just acknowledging the retcon. But even stuff like the volcanoes on some and not the other. You mentioned the tourist brochure maps before. Pedia was able to get a screen used print of one of them brochure maps for Jurassic World, and with the whole layout of the island there, and there's a photo of that here as well. Mm-hmm. One of the prop maps we see on the in the film, and there is, I don't know, official DPG or what, there is a lot of talk about the volcanoes changing the shape of the island. In general, Maserati making the landmass bigger to populate the park. There's no... for that one, it's bull. Just go to a bigger island. Go and use sauna. Just why are you doing all these earthworks to make Nublar bigger when there's nothing holding you to it whatsoever apart from an old lease?
Well, I think unfortunately what's wrong with the map, and this is mostly the satellite aerial map that we see the ACU using, the animal control unit that we'll talk about more later in the movie, is it looks like this just extremely photoshopped by somebody who's not at all familiar with either Photoshop or geography. Mm-hmm. And I mean, that was my main kind of hate on the thing. And the second thing is that the volcano doesn't look like Mount Sibo in the in Fallen Kingdom, and on the map here, it almost kind of looks like it's just a regular kind of cinder cone, or not cinder cone. It's kind of like a open volcano. Guy, his large caldera, ring around it, almost kind of like a more Pacific Islander volcano. In Fallen Kingdom, it looks more like a cinder cone, which is that kind of more traditional mountainous kind of looking thing, like say Mount Fuji in Africa. In Japan, or Mount Kilimanjaro in Africa. It's kind of got that traditional mountain shape with the hole at the top. Yeah.
And the whole mountain range around it, as we see when the planes fly into the island. Yeah, that's a weird one, and this isn't even without going into the changes between this and Fallen Kingdom as well, with that lagoon moving. But
and interesting enough, I do recall that and we'll talk about this later in the movie, is the Hammond, but while we're talking about it in the map here, is the original visitor center was originally assumed to have been in the restricted section. But now I think kind of the fan assumption here is that it is actually it is where it's supposed to be. But unfortunately, it's just kind of fenced off. It's not actually part of the restricted section itself.
Yeah, well, the Steam Blast map here I'm looking at sort of has the gyrospheres right near the old park as well. So.
We'll when we talk about Fallen Kingdom, I mean, there's more than wrong with that map than just the lagoon. There's much more wrong with that map than just the lagoon.
Yeah, all right. And I've sort of had the theory a while ago with what we see of the old air quotes old park in the visitor centre, and whether that is the actual old park, or whether it was something either a failed or not yet set up attraction. Being the fact that it's not in a restriction zone, it's in the park, main park itself. But we can talk more about that when we get to the visitor centre itself.
Yeah, there's other issues going on with the old visitor centre than just its location.
Yep. But I think we can talk more about the Jurassic World map we get to in this minute when we see it in the control room. But enough about that for now. Head over to JurassicPedia.com to check out that article, those map photos, map comparisons. Some of the team has done fantastic work trying to do a hybridised map of everything we've seen from Nublar so far, with where the old park stuff would be, and all that as well. And a lot of work went into that map, so check that out as well.
Every time we've unveiled a new asset, attendance has spiked. Global news coverage, celebrity visitors, eyes of the world.
All right, Dave, ready to get in minute 12?
Yep.
As when minute 11 of Jurassic World, Claire had met the boys, but their first meeting in 7 years hadn't exactly gone according to plan. With her working, the boys were going to be seen in the park by themselves. As we open on minute 12, we cut to a shot of the Isla Nublar security map. As the camera starts to pull out, we can hear radio chatter from ACU in the background. At the 10-second mark, Claire walks into the control room holding a coffee, asking, "What's the live count?" Vivian, one of the technicians, responds, 22,216. Claire asks if there's been any incidents, and Lowry, another technician, says, 6 kids and lost and found, 28 down with heat stroke. At the 21-second mark, Claire cuts him off, noticing a shirt he's wearing, and asks, "Where did you get that?" Larry says he got it on eBay, and then starts to go on about how he haggled the guy for $150. Claire asks, "Don't you think that was in poor taste?" Larry says, "Yeah, sure. I know people died, but that first park was legit." At the 44-second mark, just to stop Larry from rumbling, she says, "Don't wear it again," and he turns and sheepishly says, "Yeah, okay." Vivian asks, "Did you close the deal?" Claire says, "Looks like it. Verizon Wireless presents the Indominus Rex." Larry drops his head in disgust. As the minute ends, he says, "Why don't you just go the whole distance, Claire, and let the corporations name the dinosaurs?" As we ended at minute 11, Claire had fumbled her way through her first meeting with Gray and Zach after 7 years, and thanks to the phone call, was able to make a speedy getaway through the hologram of the Parasol office. But that's where we cut to scene 2, which control room. Finally, I have got a link here. I'll post up in the Facebook page of some various shots, probably as high def as we're going to get from the control room map and this massive display here in front of the building. But as we mentioned before, we got a new map of Nublar, and there's a lot of information here. Do you know if they ever released HD? You can't. There's no on Google.
I do know that there are, and this is mostly what I use to follow the movie while we're doing this podcast here. Is the it's called it's moviescreencaps.com, and they have all of the movies up there.
Oh yeah,
and and that's what I use to follow the. Well, they have. I think, do they have Fallen Kingdom? They do have Fallen Kingdom. Yes. They do have Fallen Kingdom.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, so they got all 5 movies up there, and that's what I've been using to follow along on the movies. So while I'm not actually watching the movie.
Well, yeah, well, that's where I get the stills for posting up on the social medias as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it is a great resource, and even when we've done The Lost World and Jurassic Park 3, a lot of the stuff looking in the background and that come from that site. But
Mm-hmm.
I just realised too, one thing I didn't mention when we were talking about the Nublar maps, the fact in the later on when we get to the garage,
Mm-hmm.
they've got that brochure map for Nublar on the wall, so they acknowledge that the park used to look, or they at least got that brochure in the film, that original cartoonish map. So,
Well, interestingly, is that Jack Ewens, who designed the viral site, he released on Instagram a image of the prototype, so to speak, of the Masrani site, and it showed the traditional Isla Nublar silhouette as in among the images. And he said that this is basically what we had up before we were told to change it. That it's not going to look like this. So it was a conscious choice to actually change the island shape. We just don't know why, and I doubt we'll ever get an answer. But interestingly, though, this is supposed to be the shape as we know it, because on the actual control room map, you can see in the corner of the map itself, it says sat image, and it says active, meaning it's supposed to be a live satellite feed of the island, and that graphic-y look that they got.
Yeah, yep. Looking at this map itself, we can see the different sectors on there, Sector 1, 2, 3, 4, and 6. As the camera pulls out, we can see Sector 5 is the restricted zone.
Mm-hmm.
We can also see as I said, the entire north area is sectioned off and called the restricted zone. When we sort of, we speculated a lot before the film came out what restricted zone was, whether it was Old Park, animals still running wild there, hadn't been contained. At the end of the day, mainly it's the fact the volcano's there.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's still the raptor pen, the Indominus pen. I think the aviary's in there as well, isn't it? Or is it right at the border?
The aviary's in the eastern mountain area. You can see it on the map here. It's that round spot off on it's got like a bunch of gyrosphere connections coming off of it.
Oh, okay, yep. But I sort of found it weird if it's just restricted to guess why do they have it called restricted here on the security maps and all that. But
I think
you can clearly see the mono.
I was going to say, what I always kind of assumed was, yes, the volcano was part of it, but also because they do a lot of R&D in the area, such as Owen's Raptors, and I think they kind of always wanted a buffer between that R&D section and the actual theme park itself. You know, like in case, say, the Raptors ever got loose, God forbid, they would actually have some amount of area to capture it before it actually got into the main park, you know?
Mm-hmm.
It's basically a safety measure.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I'm just looking at one of these images here of when Hoskins and Masrani go at each other about the raptors. In the background, you see the path the Indominus Rex is taking to get when it gets to the restricted zone fence. So that Indominus paddock's in the restricted zone too. And looking at where that first dot is, that's awfully close to the volcano, which we get later next film where the beacon tower and the nest is Blue's nest.
Well, I think another important thing, though, to remember is that during those 14 years between Jurassic Park 3 and Jurassic World, there was always kind of this assumption that InGen wasn't really up to any good on Isla Sorna. So there was always this kind of, because they had the Pteranodons and the big fence and keeping the Spinosaurus locked up, there was always kind of this assumption that InGen wasn't as transparent about Isla Sorna being this kind of unfenced paradise as they wanted people to think post the Lost World. And so it kind of led to this idea that anything that InGen's quote-unquote hiding can't be good. And I think the restricted area is just that. It's not anything nefarious. It's just it's not the park, and guests aren't supposed to be in it. You know? Like, we know that based on the Jurassic World site, that the Indominus thing itself was, the pen there was meant to be its eventual display pen, and it was going to have an like stadium seating built around it and all kinds of stuff. And they just never got to finishing it before she broke loose. So, and presumably that part would have been added to the park. They just never got around to it before the Indominus got out.
Yeah, and that was going to be a question. Like, obviously, I'd always thought that was just some sort of holding pen, but we know from here in the novel that they're building the fence of it up, and we'll get to it later when we get there. But it'd just mean that the line for where the restriction zone starts would loop and snake up around where the new Indominus enclosure is, and the new attraction is.
Yeah. So basically, it's just not park area. The guests aren't supposed to be in there. It's the door on the Walmart that says no unauthorized entry. You know.
Yeah.
It's not that they're hiding anything. It's just that people aren't supposed to be in there if you're not working for Jurassic World.
Yeah, and as the park expands, that space will get smaller and smaller until it just circles the volcano, probably. But we can clearly see here the monorail tracks looping around the island and heading south to the ferry terminal. It's showing 3 monorail trains on the tracks. I would have thought there would be more, and I'd have to re-look at Fallen Kingdom, but I'm pretty sure we see more than 3 monorail trains damaged or off the tracks there, but that might be another issue when we get there. But on the count, there's actually counted 3 monorails, so
I also think
3 trains.
There's definitely got to be more than 3 monorails, because they probably run loops and then secondary loops that go to different spots. Because you can see that there's the big outer loop, and then there's loops that cut through. You know, so presumably there's more than just the 3 monorails running through the park.
Yeah, even just running guests to and from the ferry terminal. Yeah. But it might be the fact that this is supposed to be the actual satellite map. I was thinking maybe the trackway is more artistically drawn on there and not showing the actual locations, but because I don't think you'd see that from space on the satellites. They're just using the map itself and the laying over all the other stuff, but.
You can see it's the satellite map, and then they have an overlay of the park happenings going on. Like you can see an X where the river cruise tour is at, and then you can see a little Triceratops logo or whatever you call it in the Western Plains over there. And it's basically it is the satellite map, but then they have an overlay on top of that satellite map.
Yeah, it's sort of weird too that everything's blue and white. There's no colour. There's a little bit of colour we're going to see in a minute with the storm and when something's wrong, something goes red, which makes it hard to see the detail too. The fact it's just white and blue, but yeah, offshore down the bottom you can see there's a boat icon, which means another ferry is approaching or departing, and there's another one that's out a bit further. It's a different icon than the one at the ferry terminal looks more like a ship, where the one out to sea looks more like a boat, and I always thought it was the actual rock off that coast that the helicopters fly past, but getting a high def image you can actually see it's another boat icon, which is weird. It's sort of heading east of the island and not heading west towards the mainland. It's heading out into the Pacific. Well,
the ferry terminal is actually on the opposite end it's on the opposite side of the island from the mainland, so the ferry terminal is on the west side and the mainland is east of the island. So it's presumably they have to either go around the horn of the island on the bottom, or they go around the top of the island. I'm assuming they'd probably go around the horn because it's probably a shorter trip, you know?
Well, it'd make more sense, but it looks like it's going north, and it makes me wonder if maybe it's a sightseeing boat or something.
Could be.
With the different icon there, but again, we mentioned this before, going on a vacation somewhere and just staying in your hotel room and not actually seeing what's out there. You're going to a dinosaur populated area, and here you are doing sightseeing tours up the west coast. There's some harder to see graphics here and logos as well, but some of the easy ones to spot, as you mentioned before, the gyrosphere up in the northwest and the North Plains. around the sides, there's a lot of video feeds from all over the park. I'm pretty sure these are the video feeds they use for the viral site, the CCTV footage of guests walking around doing stuff in the park.
Mm-hmm.
There's a title here for the whole map layout called Park Systems Master Control, and there's some graphs and displays on the bottom. One appears to be a tracker of the sun's position, which I thought they need that to let you know what time of day it is or where the sun's position is. Maybe that's got something to do with lighting or some of the shows, live shows.
Yeah. Oh, plus, I mean, they're stuck in this dark control room. It's not like they have windows, you know?
Yeah. As the camera pulls away, you can see there's a lot more on the outsides of the map as well, more columns here. Info revealed on each side. On the right, it looks like weather monitoring displays, and here we get, again, those satellite images of that sort of teardrop shape of Nublar with a nasty-looking storm approaching.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a little bit more colour here. We have one that just seems to be a satellite image with the grey cloud approaching, and then one below it with the sort of like your, whether it's wind intensity or rain intensity,
Mm-hmm.
That dark orange and red in the middle.
Which is, again, weird, because we never get a storm scene in this movie, yet in the finale, the streets are wet. So, I mean, the storm is there, you can see the storm approaching, but it's like, did they just get a drizzle? I mean, what happened with that?
Yeah, and it's sort of, I think, without rewatching the entire film, I'm pretty sure the night scene's tonight, isn't it? It only takes place over a day.
Yeah.
But it still looks close. I don't know if this is real time or a forecast, because it looks like the storm's on the coast and about to hit. Where in the novel, it's in the novel when Claire meets the boys, it's 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So,
and the weirder thing is that, I mean, the movie cuts from the Pteranodon attack. It goes from like late afternoon, where probably around 6-7 o'clock, to complete night, which is probably around, say, 9-10 o'clock at night after the sun is completely down. You know.
Well, this is near the equator too, which your sunrise, sunset. I'm pretty sure the sun doesn't go down until like 7 p.m. or something. On the equator, doesn't it? It's real long days.
For us, during like the summer, it would be around. It'd be around the sun wouldn't be. There would be completely zero daylight by 10 o'clock. So the sun, I mean, around 9:30, you'd see still a little haze on the horizon, but by 10 o'clock there'd be nothing. And being on the equator is basically summer all the time for them. So sun rises, say 6 a.m. is completely down by 9. You know.
Yeah. But even the island geography itself, having such high mountains, I know here when you go camping at some places where you're in a deep valley, you might lose the sun at 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah.
But there's still sun. The sun's gone down behind the hills, and the dew starts coming, it starts to cool down. Same in the morning, you might not get sun again until 10 a.m. The sun's up, it's just not shining down into the valley. And we know how big that mountain range is here behind the Innovation Centre. And it is the only film in the franchise that doesn't have a some sort of storm sequence in that final act or midpoint. So, yeah, it's a shame. Over on the left here, there's some real interesting stuff. There's more of the video feeds, but then it's too hard to see in the shot pulling back from the map here, but in a screen cap from later on, there's four graphs with like bar graphs, and they're each named operations flow, and there's a water count in litres. They all have water today. One's it goes 157 litres, 155, 157, 155. On that, that's too lower quantity river if there's some sort of flow control for the river or lagoon or something like that. But there's something here monitoring 4 different water reservoirs or something, or flow rates for something, which only 157 litres is not a lot. So maybe it might be the flow rate of the fountains.
Yeah.
Outside the.
Yeah, it could be.
Would
that be enough for dinosaur, you think? I mean, especially like one of the large herbivores, I'm sure they drink a lot of water.
Yeah, we're using very rough conversion here. 155 litres, well, 205 litres is 44 gallons, so it'd be under a 44 gallon drum worth. But there's no calculation of a flow rate. It's just flow, which I thought was weird. But there is smaller numbers there, which probably has what that is. Moving the map aside as we start to pull back from the map here, and you can hear the radio chatter between ACU talking about the Pachy and if they need to tranquilise it. And it's sort of odd, I found, that they're here and they've got the ACU channels open for the whole control room in here. You think there'd be a radio operator in there or something, not necessarily hearing what ACU is up to in the open like this, but we finally see an active control room, not just Muldoon sitting there with his feet on the console watching the tour program. There's a lot of people. There's a good dozen people in here too, all different stations. As we pull out from the map, we can see one console down the front's got that same storm image with the storm approaching on. We get that from the station next to Lowry here as well. So they're obviously reusing some of the graphs and computer print displays they've got, just to make the control room look populated and busy. But Claire walks in and stands between Larry and Vivian. I had to IMDb Vivian to find out what her name was, because I don't think she's ever called that in the film.
I think you're right, actually. I think it's only mentioned in the credits.
Yeah, unless there might be something Larry might mention her later when they're discussing who's leaving or something. We'll see when we get there, but Claire's holding a coffee, so she's just been somewhere else and got a coffee fix for the day. And it's sort of odd here too. Behind it, the rear wall of the control room must be all glass panels, which makes you wonder if there's a spot there for guests to come in and do a tour without entering the actual. I have to pay attention to when Owen barges in, because you can see the whole map and all that sort of reflecting on this rear glass wall.
Well, it's also interesting that you get to the control room through an elevator, which implies that so you get to the control room through an elevator. We know that the helipad is on the roof of the control room there, so one could also assume that there is in fact a elevator system that goes up and down that building, and then a tunnel system that gets you to the innovation center.
Well, yeah, it is a multi-level. Without looking at a photo of it to guess how many windows high it is, it is multi-level and built on the side of the hill. From all the exterior shots, there's no path at all exterior-wise to get from there down to the rest of the park, unless you go for a walk through the jungle. But yeah, we back when we had that elevator scene, we suggested that maybe there is a tunnel system linking the controller, or linking this control building to the innovation centre, which is how Claire can go back and forth so quickly, and even Hoskins and that later in the film. But obviously other levels of this building too obviously should have to have an office here. There'd be park security. ACU's probably, I don't know if ACU would be in this building where they're stationed, because there's obviously no vehicles, there's no garage, there's nothing here for ACU. Yeah, that's an odd one. But yeah, a lot of the park runnings and all that I imagine be here as well. Just to be sort of your headquarters. Not just the control room. But Claire asks Vivian what the live count is. Again, this seems to be a bit of a daily routine, and I don't know if this is a flub or what, but Vivian answers 22,216, which is weird because when we get screenshots of the screen, as she's saying it, it must come up on the screen, because in a minute we can see that it's up there and it's showing the count 21,216. So she's 1,000 off somehow. I thought maybe the screenshot here, I'm looking at Google's from later in the film and they've lost 1,000 guests, but no, we see, because on the side of it we got the red light up area of the Western Plains being closed that she's about to complain about next minute. So,
well, it's also interesting because we do see that live count, and there's only 2 of the 4 people lit up, which would imply that they're only at half capacity.
I wondered about that, the fact that they got the 4 people lit up there, and the 4 people icons, and maybe that is the capacity. Which you see how busy things are now. You imagine it double. Is there ever any mention of how many people they were getting through the gates when they opened?
No, I don't think so.
No.
I think she said his son's. I think didn't Tad, the dad, say something like they handle 20,000 visitors a day, but I don't think there's ever a mentioning of anything like that.
Yeah. I'm just trying to think forward to the helicopter. Well, no, even back when she was in the lab, she said attendance is up. I don't know. Nothing to compare it to, I suppose. Under the guest count on the map, looking here, there's also some other counts going on. Top one's 58 gyrosphere users. Under that, there's 52 people on the Cretaceous cruise. Under that, there's 3 monorails docked, so they're confirming there's only 3 monorails. But considering it's 03 and not just 3, there may be more that aren't being used.
Yeah, or in motion, they just have the 3 of them that are currently loading or offloading, you know?
Yeah, and I'd imagine it'd be very much like the visitor garage with the Explorers. There'd be lines of Explorers down there, some being used, some not, some being maintained. I'd assume there's a large underground area, workshop for those monorails, and there's probably a dozen of them down there that they can call upon as well, especially if they can double this this attendance. There's currently 129 players on the Jurassic Park golf course, or the Jurassic Golf Course, which out there making full use of that. 24 active ACU teams and 2,250 park staff, which there's a lot of staff here. That's what you mentioned last minute about those bungalows up on the hill maybe being for staff. I don't think you'd fit 2,200 in those bungalows or those buildings. So I wonder. There's got to be a whole Hilton-sized motel somewhere for staff.
Oh, I guarantee you they've got their own little compound with private private tennis course, swimming pool, carnivores.
The motor pool would be there as well.
What's that?
The motor pool would be there as well. There'd be G-Wagons and all that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But so a lot more information that I could see on that map. I love here too, you can sort of instantly know that Lowry is one of us when you see his workspace with all the dinosaurs and that on it, which, again, they couldn't have any licensed figures here.
No, these are all Chinosaurs. In fact, I recognize a few of them. But yeah, they're basically all generic dollar store toys.
Although when we cut back, when he's looking back at Claire, there is a brachiosaur there that the head at least looks pretty spot on for a brachiosaur. So I don't know if they just got lucky with that mould or what the go is. But Claire asks if there's been any incidents, and I'd imagine there'd be some sort of incident level where she'd get a call. So she's probably just wondering about smaller incidents here. But you'd think the Packy that we learn next minute getting out from its or wandering, having its implant shorted out, be something you'd let operations know about. But Larry replies, 6 kids in the lost and found, 28 down with heat stroke, which I don't know if that's 28 guests or 28 animals.
Good question. I don't
know what would be down with heat stroke.
But those 6 kids in the lost and found, you think they might be the Cretaceous campers?
Oh. Well, that would imply that they've been found.
True. That'd be true. They'd be lost kids that have been picked up and can't find their parents.
Yeah, if it said the 6 kids missing.
Yeah.
But even from what little we know, and especially at this point where nothing's gone to hell yet, that whatever the Cretaceous camp is operational and running, so at this point they wouldn't be lost. Maybe. I don't know, we'll have to see what happens when that starts up, but it could definitely be a sort of a tie-in or something there. Which I'm surprised it's only 6. You'd think the amount of kids running around would be quite easy.
Yeah, I mean, you got 22,000 people running around. Heck, I can imagine 6 kids going, getting lost at a one Six Flags theme park, you know?
Yeah, especially like it's a little bit after 1, so it's still sort of around that lunchtime. Families are sitting down having food. Kids are probably asking to go to the toilet and running off to go to the toilet, then getting distracted by gift shops or floating dinosaur balloons and all the other stuff we see to attract kids' attention. So,
Oh yeah, I mean,
but good work.
I mean, this whole thing is sensory overload for us. I mean, you can imagine what it would do to a child's eyes, you know?
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, good work, Jurassic World, only having six kids in Lost and Found. Claire gets a bit of a look of horror here on her face as she recognises something on that Larry's wearing, and she cuts him off mid-sentence and says, "Where did you get that?" And it's odd because when he's talking about Lost and Found, he's sort of leaning over his monitor, talking away from her, but he must have turned at some point where she could see the fact that he's wearing the old park T-shirt with the logo on it. He said, "Oh, this I got it off eBay. Yeah, it's pretty amazing. I got it for $150. The mint condition one goes for $300, and that's where he's cut off again by Claire asking if she thinks it may be in poor taste. There's a lot of speculation around this shirt, how it got to eBay, whether it was an old warehouse find that someone started selling off. There's the theory out there as well that park staff or those into construction, when they went back to Nublar and started building the park, ransacked the gift shop in the old visitor centre.
Oh, no doubt. I mean, I'm sure that all those plushies there sitting in the gift shop did not. I'm sure they just disappeared one day, you know.
Well, not so much the stuff in the gift shop on display, because it probably would have been. Although it was in the kitchen there, in the dining room there, which didn't have many windows, so. Although, yeah, I don't think weather, water, that sort of thing may not have got in there and damaged it, but it'd be more so stuff in storage in downstairs in the basement or something, boxes of stuff that was still wrapped in plastic and hadn't been put out on display. Which is an odd one for Jurassic Park, the fact they had a fully stocked gift shop there when the park's still not going to open for another year.
Well, again, I think that might have just been for for the display of it, you know, just for Hammond had some guests coming down for the weekend. Hey guys, let's get the gift shop stocked up, you know.
Yeah, exactly. And it makes me think of sort of some of the things where you see people do VIP tours, and at the end they sit here and they walk up to them, put a hat on, give them a flag, and all that sort of stuff. I think more sports teams than that when you get people look at that, but it also sort of tie in with Gennaro and his speech about charging $2,000 a day and all that sort of thing, and the marketing, and Malcolm's absolute disgust in the fact that they're selling out the whole thing. But it does show that obviously they've had a manufacturer teed up in China, Japan, overseas, wherever, making merchandise for the park, whether it was just an initial test run of that stuff that was on display for the VIPs or what. Maybe there was a warehouse in China that made 20,000, done an order of 20,000 shirts, and all of a sudden no Jurassic Park, India not paying Chapter 11 or all that sort of stuff, and them just maybe not destroying the whole lot, throwing it all out, but then once the whole light of the park and all that comes to public knowledge, people go, "Hey, didn't you have a box of that somewhere?" or something like that.
Well, heck, yeah, the movie itself had a giant merchandising campaign. I remember there's a video on YouTube somewhere that I think was basically a video that was sent to advertisers to try to get people to buy in and basically do what Lucas did and slap that logo on everything he could.
Well, even going into Fallen Kingdom too, like food, frozen chicken, and all the sort of frozen food you get in cardboard cartons. All Jurassic World nuggets, Jurassic World, all that stuff, toothpaste.
I'm just thinking, I mean, if that was just a movie, though, imagine what they would do for an actual theme park. Oh, I mean, I'm sure they'd slap it on every lunchbox they could.
Yeah, yep. Oh, just look at the Disney ears that you put on your head.
Oh yeah, really.
All the sort of Disney stuff, drink bottles.
Put mouse ears on anything.
Yeah, yep. And there is a lot of merchandise in this film that we don't really see up close or that. There's the misting fan squirty bottles and stuff like that that's got the Jurassic World, just that round logo after T-Rex head in it.
Well, again, it reminds me of, like, say, a city zoo you go to. They have that main gift shop, but then they have, like, a bunch of other little vendor carts sitting around the park where you can basically pick up, like, a stuffed toy or, like you said, the squirty fan or anything like that. Hats, balloons, pretzels. They're making bank here. They're definitely making bank with this place.
Well, even the food wrappers, but even stuff that we got in the real world, like your drink cups and that for cinema theatres and that, is exactly stuff you'd be able to buy at the park as merchandise.
Well, they even had the like they showed that on the Jurassic World site. They showed the various vendors that you could buy from, and in fact, that's one of the places that at the end of the movie, Zach, Ray, and Owen get trapped in there by the Indominus Rex, and they're trapped against one of those, like, a rack of stuffed animals and T-shirts in a vendor's booth.
Yeah, yep. That was a tangent. We're going to go on to another one here because there's a quick cut in here with Vivian and Claire. It's sort of that look. It doesn't look like this is the first time Larry's gone on about his shirt or gone on about the original park, but the poor taste. Larry answers the shirt. Yeah, I do understand people died. It was terrible, but that first park was legit.
It was. Yes.
It was.
I think we've talked plenty of times on here about how just nice and generally kind of luxurious the original park looked, whereas this seems kind of more or less Disneyland versus versus an exclusive club kind of thing, you know?
Yeah, and it's hard because Jurassic Park hadn't opened. I think there's some graphs during that dinner, that lunch scene where the projection
it's interesting.
Up to thousands.
Well, it's interesting because I was actually recently talking to one of the guys behind the Gates Facebook page before we started recording this, and I was talking. He's putting together a what was it? It was a fan brochure that he wanted to do, that he'd been putting together. And I was looking through some supplies. He had found a card that had a picture of an island, of some of the islands on there, and I looked through my full screen version, my 35mm full screen version of the first movie, and I'd actually found the image. We don't actually get a clear full image of these islands, but it was captioned at the bottom of the image, Jurassic Park Europe, and it was part of a section of slides in the slideshow that had been for future expansion. So, and we know also from the novel as well that Jurassic Park had been planning a Jurassic Park Europe and a Jurassic Park Japan.
Yeah. Yep.
So yeah, they were definitely planning on franchising and kind of following the whole bring the zoo to them. But yeah, but it looks like Jurassic World kept it with the whole, we're going to make you come to Costa Rica to see the zoo.
Yeah. Yeah. And of course we got the line from Hammond himself that the park's only going to open with the tour they're about to take. So the fact that they're rushing in and only going to have that one attraction.
And yeah, it's so we do see among the slideshow future attractions like the Jungle River Cruise, the apiary, and then we see other attractions that of course we don't see. I think they have an advertisement for Jurassic Tennis, and I think possibly an airport would have been on the island because there's a slide that shows Continental Airlines airplane flying over a tropical island, so presumably they would have gone with air travel for the original Jurassic Park. But I remember reading from one of the creators of Jurassic World that they had planned on making Jurassic World, Jurassic Park had it opened when it did, and then basically genericizing. It would have become this watered down generic theme park that we see after Hammond had effectively been gone, because I think in the canon here, Hammond didn't last too much longer after the Lost World.
Yeah. It also makes me wonder. We've brought it up before with especially a lot of stuff we're discussing in Jurassic Park 3, but just how much the world knows about Jurassic Park and Nublar, and the fact that Larry here is going on about how legit the original park was, and what he's going to talk about more so going forward from that is the realism of the dinosaurs and not needing hybrids, which is a great in-joke. But we'll leave that for in a minute. Because we are going to talk about it. There's a quick view here, or quick cut between Vivian and Claire. It seems like this isn't the first time Larry's been going on about how legit the original park was, even before he got the shirt. And in one of the shots here with Vivian at a station, you can see there's a few Polaroids down the bottom of a computer screen, which makes me wonder, with the park being so isolated, what the staff rotation is. How often do they get to go home for holidays and all that sort of stuff? Because it's not like Disneyland where you just go home at night and come back the next day. It's you're isolated there with everyone else.
Well, presumably they did have, like we've been talking about, they had some place for the employees to bunk for the night, and I'm sure they had shift rotations, basically first, second, and third shift, where they had somebody running morning, somebody running afternoon, and then somebody running nights. Just making sure guests didn't go out and cause trouble at night, you know? I mean, imagine if they did have everybody watching the park at night, and you get teenagers go and raid the liquor cabinet and then try to ride the babies at Triceratops.
Well, it's sort of, it's hard because even just going back to Jurassic Park, how much automation they're trying to put in the systems there, and having... I can't remember what, I think Nedra just says minimum staff for 3 days. And that's, you're looking at a lot less stuff. You've got motion sensors, monitoring animals and everything else, where here we are 20 years later, X amount of years later, you got a dozen people in this control room monitoring. Yes, you've got 21,000 guests and not 8, so you're probably going to need to pay attention to more of this stuff, but I could only assume that for those married employees, there'd be accommodation for the family as well. I don't think you're leaving the husband. I don't think Vivian's got a husband and kid at home that she only sees once a month or something like that.
Well, she does say later on in the movie that she does have a boyfriend.
Okay.
But yeah, it's interesting because, like you said, wait, I'm sorry. What was that you said before, Vivian? I'm sorry.
Automation.
Oh yeah, because it's interesting because one of Hammond's first takeaways from the whole disaster that was Jurassic Park was they were too dependent on automation, and then you see this with the park where they've got a much larger staff.